Hey, good morning. Welcome to Hobby Evolution, episode 707. Welcome to a Friday free-for-all. Is that toothpaste? I think that's might be toothpaste on my mouth. Good morning. Good morning. Happy Friday. I want to talk about retail. It's not dead. I want to talk about retail. My thoughts. I think I've shared enough thoughts on retail, but just based on my observations from yesterday, want to preview the Madison Card Show, which is coming up tomorrow at the Sheraton Hotel, John Nolen Drive, 9 to 3, sold out, 125 tables. So we'll preview tomorrow's Madison Card Show. I thought there was one other thing. Of course, I didn't write notes. So that's what we'll talk about whatever else comes to mind. It's a free-for-all Friday. The card hobbyist is in the house. What's up? Johnny Boy Cards, good morning. Victor, hello. Dan, what is happening? So I had hit the thumbs up on the way in. Thank you, card hobbyist. I had something for dinner last night that I haven't made in a long time. Probably since I was working in radio and it was like a necessity to eat grilled cheese. So we had a conference call, myself and John and Mike from this past weekend's Midwest premiere. We were going over, things that we could have done differently, things to improve upon, all that, just kind of going over everything from last weekend's Midwest premiere. So it was kind of a late dinner. My wife was in an open house for a home she's selling. So after we got off the call, went upstairs. It's kind of late, like after 7 o'clock, which is really late for me. Like we are 6 o'clock dinner people, 6 to 6:30. So it was like 7:30, and so I didn't want to make something. And it's like, I don't want peanut butter and jelly, don't want a ham sandwich. And I'm like, grilled cheese sounds good. And I think with the important thing about grilled cheese, it's all about the bread, right? So I have good grilled cheese bread. I was going to look when I went upstairs to get my coffee. I can't remember what bread it was, like sourdough from whatever. I switch it up, but I like Texas toasted. The thicker slices of bread make for good, especially grilled cheese, but also French toast, which I never make. That would have been a good option. I could have made French toast last night. So I went with grilled cheese, and it was good. And I dip my grilled cheese in ketchup. I don't get too fancy. It's just like literally, how do you make your grilled cheese? So my grilled cheese, get the skillet out, warm it up. I butter the bread, and then I put just a regular Kraft slice of cheese on each piece of bread. Let that butter on the bread get brown, and then I'll put one side over the other so that cheese gets nice and melty. Flip it a few times just to make sure the cheese is melted and it's not gonna burn. So I dip the grilled cheese. Oh, Victor goes barbecue sauce. I was wondering, it's like, what other condiments would make a good combination of melted cheese? Barbecue sauce would be. I should have went with barbecue. Barbecue sauce is one of my favorite condiments, more so than ketchup. I mean, my thoughts on French fries. French fries go in mayo, although it's got to be a good mayo. It can't be just like Hellman's. It's got to be a good mayo. Where are we at in the chat? We've got Card Hobbyist, Johnny Boy Cards, Victor, Dan, Ed is with us. What is up, Ed? David, good morning. Something Sports Cards is with us. Low Roller Scratchers in the house, and he says it's hockey season. Hockey season, folks. George, what is up? He loves grilled cheese. Need to make one soon. Dan says working English camps Saturday and Sunday this weekend to help pay for my PSA sub. English camp sounds like a nightmare for me. Actually, no, algebra camp would be the worst. Algebra camp. That would be the worst. Morning. What's up, Paige and Deanie Bean? Dan says, I was going to send more cards to 5-star for the $18, but we'll wait until it comes down again. I did dip. Boston Smoke, good morning to you. Happy Friday. Let's see. Matt Marg, why you dip? Why you would dip? You dip, Daniel? How cool was that? If you didn't watch Sports Card Radio last weekend, they had the real Daniel that dipped. And it's unfortunate, the whole meaning behind you dip Daniel, it's not what I thought it was. And I kind of, it's like one of those things where you have this vision of what something means, and then when you find out the real meaning, it's disappointing. I was disappointed. I'm disappointed by the true meaning behind you dip Daniel. So I can't remember what it was, but it's something to the effect of like he's going to get into another break or something like that. So he's dipping into another break. He's not dipping out. Like I just thought Daniel dipped, like peace out, homies, I'm out. But it wasn't that. He was dipping like in a good, like he wanted more. I'm going to have to blow my nose. So I think I'm going to mute. I'm going to ask you, am I muted starting now? Okay, microphone's back on because I want to blow my nose so you don't hear me sniffling. Dan said I am muted. Okay, so I'm going to blow my nose. Oh, I'm going to mute the... These weather changes are killing me. So it was super cold like last weekend and early this week, and now it's like warming up. It was like 60 something yesterday. I think it's going to be 70 this weekend, which is nice. So hopefully that doesn't keep people. It is October, so I don't think weather plays as much. Good weather doesn't play as much of a factor with card shows because the Madison Card Show is tomorrow, 9 to 3 at the Sheraton Hotel, John Nolen Drive. Where in the summer months, I want rain and cloudy skies, so it keeps people off the lakes and inside at a card show. Whereas if it's October, it's like, yeah, we're kind of over the whole summer weather stuff. So we're going to go to a card show instead. So that's my hope. It is homecoming in Wisconsin. Go Badgers. Purdue, the Boilermakers coming to town. So it's going to be a tough game for the Badgers. 2:30 game. So you can come out to the Madison Card Show and then go to the game. So before we talk a little bit more, I do want to preview the Madison Card Show. We'll talk about that. We've got Zach and Porter in the house. What is up? George says, throw some dill pickles on it when grilling it up. You'll thank me. Ooh, and I still have some of my homemade pickles. So maybe I'll have to go on a grilled cheese kick here. Cooter, what's up? My daughter says she was about to lose her breakfast listening to your culinary pursuits. And I'm like refined now. Like you should have heard my culinary pursuits when I was in my 20s. DR says you double dip. Herman is with us. What's up, Herman? Let's see. Cooter says she's a grilled cheese snob. Nothing less than 3 cheeses and no damn ketchup. Oh yeah. Bread, just 2 slices of bread, little butter, Kraft cheese slice, and dip it in ketchup. Boom. It's a great grilled cheese. I am not a grilled cheese snob, as you can tell. Let's see. My wife is a big grilled cheese. Actually, she's not really into. She's a mac and cheese. She's a macaroni and cheese snob. Again, me with macaroni and cheese, Kraft out of the box, and maybe throw a little ketchup swirls inside. Matt Marg says the real was okay with it. Had a good time with it. Yeah, the real Daniel. He was living it up. He even has his own shirt. How cool is that? Card Hobbyist is lying. Screw you out of here, Molina. Let's see. Victor says 70s this weekend. Herman says, Bo's Friday the 13th talk the other day got me looking for more autographed masks. Picked up the Ted White from the final chapter. Nice. Card Hobbyist says, put some goat cheese on it. I do love goat cheese. Love me some goat cheese. Max says, I have never had a better mac and cheese than Kraft. KFC comes close. I'm not a mac and cheese eater. Like Kraft is about the only, like, I don't know if I've ever ordered mac and cheese from like a restaurant. Same with like pasta. If I go to like, I mean, even like in an Italian restaurant, usually I order, and now after going to Italy and having pasta in Italy, it's like completely different. And now it's like, ooh, authentic Italian in America. Not even close. Doesn't touch it. So it's like if I go to an Italian restaurant, I'm just going to order whatever the hell I want because it's not going to be truly authentic. Cooter says Kraft is not cheese. It is processed cheese per the label. That is true. Thick cut hoop cheese. I have no idea what that means. Michael is in the house. What is up, Michael? Talking a little grilled cheese this morning. It's been so long since I made up some grilled cheese, and it's like we've got to go on a grocery run, and so my options were limited. I had some pizza rolls in the freezer, but only like 7, and it's like that's not enough. And so guess what? There's going to be 7 pizza rolls in my pizza roll bag in the freezer until like we move out of this house. That's what I do. It's like I don't want. You should realistically just like, okay, there's only 7 left. Just make them all. And if you don't eat them, throw them. But my problem is I'll eat them all. And it's like, oh, I'm only going to eat this amount, and I'm not going to eat 7 more because if 7 more are on my plate, pizza rolls, I will eat them. So I'll leave 7 in the freezer, and guess what? It's like, well, I'm not going to eat 7 pizza rolls. I'll eat them eventually, and I never do. And so it's kind of like the Miller Lite that's in my beer fridge downstairs. I have 3 cans of Miller Lite. Miller Lite's the worst. Ugh. Miller Lite is like piss. So I have 3 Miller. We had a summer party. It was like when we moved into this house. 2000 would have been the summer. So we moved in the winter of 2016. So summer of 2017. And there's still 3 cans of Miller Lite in my refrigerator. 5 years old, 5+ years old. And I just keep them in there just to, it's almost like, it's in there for decoration. Just if I run out of beer, hey, at least there's 3 cans of Miller Lite on the top of the fridge that have been sitting in there for 5.5 years. Max says Miller Lite is horrible. Miller Lite's the worst. Let's see. Max says, who cares what Kraft is? It's a better cheese than most out there, especially for grilled cheese. It is a great grilled cheese. It works. And the slices, I mean, come on. Can you get any better than just for a guy like me that's lazy in the kitchen, I can just slap on a slice of Kraft cheese, and boom, the oven does the burners do the rest. Cooks them up in the skillet. Boom, easy meal. Zach and Porter says, Herman going out on a ledge, assuming your days of thick cut hoop cheese may be behind you. Hope you are doing better. Matt says, great stream. Yankees need some help. I have not checked. I did have the game on last night. I don't know which game. I had a game on last night. I think I was listing cards. I don't know what I was doing. Probably listing cards on eBay, not paying attention to the TV, which is par for the course. But I did have a baseball game on last night. And I did watch some of the Bucks game. I watched some of the first quarter of the Bucks game. Michael says old beer is great for boiling brats. Like how old? Like is like 5 years seems like but and I will say like Miller Lite, like that's okay. So Michael probably can help me out here. Others can probably help me out. I should know this. I've lived in Wisconsin long enough that I should know my brat trivia. So growing up, we would boil brats. Not we, I was a kid. My dad would boil brats in beer, and he would use like the cheapest beer. Now, he said that's because it's the best beer to use. Now, as I'm older, was it the best beer to use because he's just cheap and he didn't want to spring for like a good beer to boil brats in? Now, growing up in Illinois, well, and growing up when I did grow up and when most of us grew up, we didn't have craft beer, which I don't think craft beer would make for a good brat boil anyway. But I would think, but I just grew up like the cheapest of the cheap beer, Keystone Light or whatever, but that's what we boiled our brats in. So I'm just wondering, is that the best beer to boil your brats in? Or was that just because my dad was cheap and it's like, it's beer's beer. We're just going to boil brats. My mom, not good in the kitchen. She has some of her higher points, but most of the stuff not very good. She had some like leftover craft beer and boiled. It's like, oh, it's beer. Beer is beer, and it was like it didn't turn like it's not like you could taste it, but you could just taste something was off. And I don't know if it was like an IPA or like a stout, but something she used to boil brats in, and it just gave it an off flavor. It wasn't like it was like a brat that tasted like oatmeal stout, but it was just like, oh, this is kind of different. So I'm just wondering, what is the best beer to boil your brats in? I really don't know. Have you ever had beer cheese? Is it beer cheese? Beer cheese soup? Holy crap. When I first moved to Wisconsin, and I was one of the guys that worked on our crew, because I did stats for the broadcast team, and one of the guys that was on, actually he might have been a photographer, I can't remember. But anyway, he was from Wisconsin or lived in Wisconsin at some point in time. And he's like, oh, you live in Wisconsin, you ever have beer cheese soup or whatever it's called? I'm like, no. So I Googled a recipe, and holy crap, is that good? It's a cheesy Friday, beer cheese soup. Where are we at? Fall Creek Collectibles in the house. What's happening? Herman is feeling better. Hope the meds are doing their job. Let's see. Cooter says Miller Lite boiling beer for brats. Mark Hoyle, what's happening? Dan says my dad drank Old Style and smoked Benson and Hedges. So my dad he mixed it when I was a kid. He drank Old Milwaukee Light, and then he switched to Keystone Light, and then I, as an underage kid, kids don't drink underage. In my late teens, I turned him on to Busch Light because, hey, when you're 19, 20 years old, you want the cheap beer, and had some Busch Light. My dad had it, and he's like, hey, this is really good. And so he was a Busch Light guy for the rest of his living time on Earth. And then he's like smoked the cheapest. Like he was a chain smoker, so he just smoked the cheapest stuff. In fact, he was circumventing tobacco taxes, and he had. This is the thing. You can and I'm sure they've cracked down on this, but he would buy cigarettes from like Kentucky, and he would pay with a check, and he would get like cartons of these Kentucky cigarettes, and they were cheap because they avoided tobacco taxes. So he was GPC. That was the big GPC. He was smoking heaters, GPC, before he was turned on. When the internet came around, he was able to scoop out some how to avoid tobacco taxes. So hopefully the IRS doesn't hear that, or whoever the taxing authority, the DEA, or does DEA control the tobacco industry? I don't know. Whoever controls the tobacco industry. Let's see. Fall Creek says, I don't know about cheap, but PBR is the best to beer, best beer to boil in, or drunken onions. I've never had drunken onions, but it sounds fun. Victor says, my dad too, old style in a Cub game. My dad was Busch Light in a Cub game in his retirement. Red Light 34, what's happening? Fall Creek says, beer cheese soup with popcorn on top. I did not add the popcorn on top. But now that you mention it, that does sound tasty. And it's getting to be beer cheese soup weather as we get colder here in Wisconsin, although it's going to be in the 70s the next few days. Mark Hoyle says Schlitz, and I'm going to butcher this one. Narragansett for my dad. Paul Carl Cards, what's up? Good morning to you. Let's see, where are we at? Beer cheese on pretzels, sustenance of the gods. Oh man, beer cheese and a pretzel. Hell yeah. GPC, generic pack of cigarettes. Yes, my dad was a GPC. ATF, there you go. That's what it was. My dad was a GPC smoker. Zach and Porter says, my college girlfriend's parents would go to Native American reservations to purchase cigarettes. Yes, I believe there was a huge cost break. Yeah, because I don't think Native Americans were taxed. So you get that savings passed on for the lack of cigarette and tobacco tax. So how about that? How about we're talking about cheap beer and cigarettes, grilled cheese. My dad smoked the GPCs and drank Busch beer when he wasn't drinking cheap VAT 69 scotch. My dad was not hard liquor, and that's probably was passed on. I do not touch hard liquor, or I don't drink wine. I don't I'm beer, like strictly beer. That's my alcohol of choice. Every once in a while, if we're like at a restaurant, I'll have like a dessert cocktail or whatever they are, like a grasshopper or something. But more times than not, it's like, just give me another beer. Ron Coomer worked at a gas station on Narragansett in the Clearing neighborhood. Ron Coomer, Coombs Corner. Where's that at? Lockport, I think. Coombs Corner. He owns a bar. Matt Marg says, grew up on a lot of real kielbasa with ketchup, hard rolls, and the cheap ham from the bakery and deli. Had a lot of the cooked turkey legs from our local IGA. I'm so upset my local IGA, our small hometown grocery store, is closing. Herman says that has Oktoberfest written all over it. Cooter, be careful if someone puts political signs on your property without your permission. Putting razor blades on edges of signs in Southeast PA. Whoa! That's taking it to another level. I steer clear of political signs altogether, just to avoid. And I'm not extreme one way or the other. I have beliefs that cross both sides of the aisle. So for me, I just steer clear of political signs and political chatter and all that. And razor blades. Max says, so you've had an old fashioned. Bo, you're missing out big time. I have never had an old fashioned. Never had an old fashioned. I've been to the old fashioned. I took Dan to the old fashioned. I took Herman to the old fashioned because they have great cheese curds. But I just had spotted cow. No old fashions for me. Michael says, beer and onions, maybe a little oregano adds flavor before and after finishing on the grill. DR says, I would love to hear your favorite Cub at each position. Oh, man, I could not do that off the cuff. I could try. Let me get through the chat and I'll see what I can pull up. Michael says, I think I've always used old beer because I won't drink it anymore, but dang it all, I sure am not going to waste it. It would be Wisconsin blasphemy. Heck yeah. Cooter says, when generic became a thing, you would see the white cans that just said beer on them. Skunk piss. Now, does anybody else remember? I remember as a kid, and it must have been like an 80s thing, and by the late 80s, it was no longer a thing. But I remember the yellow aisle in Eagle Country Market. Now, I think Eagle's was a Midwestern regional grocery store chain. It was based out of the Quad Cities. I think Milan was its home base. It went bankrupt probably 20 years ago. But I remember going to the Eagle Country Market and there being a yellow aisle. And it was just like what Cooter said with beer. It was like, and it was one huge aisle. and everything was yellow. And so the package, like, so potato chips was a yellow bag. It was just yellow. And it just said in big black block lettering, potato chips. And then it would have like green beans, canned green beans. And it was a yellow can, green beans. So I'm wondering, am I like, is this all a dream? Because I've Googled this, like trying to find the yellow aisle. And if I was like probably 4 or 5 years old trying to remember the yellow aisle. And I know it's Eagle Country Market. Eagle Country, I'm going to Google it right now. Yellow aisle. And let's see. Let's Google image it. So yeah, and there's like no images. Maybe if I do Eagle Country Market generic. Oh yeah, and there's a picture that pops up. That's how I remember Eagle Country Market. I think somebody in the chat just said, but there's like no images. Somebody in the chat said there's still Eagle in Iowa. So there is, this says Dubuque Eagle Country Market. So I wonder if like somebody bought the name. Eagle Country Market, Dubuque, Iowa, Eagle Food Centers. Let's see. So yeah, Eagle Food Centers were closed in 2003. Went bankrupt. Let's see. In 2003, ceased operations, sold off its assets. Some of the stores were acquired by other chains. The Downtown Eagle Corporation was founded to take over 2 stores, one in Clinton, Iowa, and the other in Dubuque, Iowa. They purchased the rights to the Eagle Country Market name and signage and operate 2 stores in the Eagle Country Market name. Interesting. So the Eagles that are still open in Iowa bought the rights to the name. That's something I didn't know. So thank you. Who said that? Who said that? Somebody said that here in the chat. Let's see. Cooter says we saw that. Ed says I'm consistent with my political views. I think all politicians suck. I'm similar. Johnny Boy Card says old fashioned great drink. Let's see. Alcohol abuse is when you waste or neglect alcohol. Big no. Todd, it was Todd that says the Eagles are in Iowa. Never heard of that store in Chicago. I think it was like kind of a small, it was based in the Quad Cities. I wonder if there's a store locator. Let's see. Eagle Country Market locations. There's got to be like, here's where the Eagle Country Market locations were. I'm sure it wasn't in Chicago. It was probably like in the suburbs and in the more rural cities. Because we had one in Geneseo, we had one in Kewanee. Of course, the warehouse and the corporate headquarters were in Milan, Illinois, which is spelled like Milan. Let's see, 1980s. In 1988, new stores opened in Galesburg and the Chicago suburb of Downers Grove. So Downers Grove had one. Let's see. In 1981, Eagle operated 136 stores. Eagle expanded into the Midwest by opening a new distribution center in Westville, Indiana. Let's see. 1990s must have been the downfall. It had 5 Chicago area stores, but it doesn't say where. So there you go. So yeah, I'm sure it wasn't in the city, but it was in the suburbs. Let's see. Todd says we had Eagles in Elgin. There you go. Elgin was one. Eagles is a beach souvenir chain in Myrtle Beach. Loved Eagle as a kid. Local Eagle owner, was a Cubs fan. Got to meet Ernie Banks and Mark Grace for signings at Eagle. Awesome. Let's see. Dubuque. There you go. Rich Klein, what is up? So happy we were having food and drink talk and 12 likes out of 32. Decent percent. Thank you, Rich. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Giant Eagle. Yes, Giant Eagles is separate. What's Giant Eagle? Giant Eagle. Oh, Giant Eagle is more East Coast. Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. Oh, sneaks into Indiana, Maryland. Giant Eagle. Let's see. Elgin for sure. Dan asks if Todd is near 31. Downers Grove, hometown of the Macho Man, Randy Savage, and his brother, Leaping Lanny Poffo. So, okay. So, Let's preview the Madison Card Show. Zach and Porter says grocery store business is crazy, low margins, crazy competition. Some states like Wisconsin have minimum markup laws too. I didn't realize that until I pulled up to the Quick Trip one day, and they have a sign, and I think it might have been Busch Light. It's like cheapest. I can't remember how the sign, but it's like lowest legal beer prices, and I'm like, what the hell does that mean? So I had to ask. I asked a coworker, and they're like, oh yeah, you can't sell a beer for whatever. It's strange how many different laws there are state by state, especially when it comes to alcohol. There's a lot, like Pennsylvania has a weird alcohol law. Like when I went to my wife's family's from Pittsburgh, so we were visiting family in Pittsburgh, and went to a liquor store, and I'm like, I just want like a 6-pack, and there were no 6-packs, and there were no like fridge, like there was no cold beer. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, no, we can't legally sell anything under like a 12-pack. Like, that's weird. Indiana, gas stations can't sell cold beer, but they can sell cold wine. So all of the beer is warm, like out on the floor. So each state is odd. Here in Madison, you would think Wisconsin doesn't have any alcohol laws. So Wisconsin, at least in Madison, you can't buy alcohol after 9 p.m., even on like a Friday. So there's different. When I lived in Macomb, Illinois, the county was a dry county. It wouldn't, you couldn't, like, liquor stores could not be open on Sundays. Bars could not be open on Sundays unless they served food. So you could go to the sports bar and get absolutely hammered on Sunday, but you couldn't go buy a 6-pack at the liquor store. Like, come on, that's backwards. I think they since changed. I think within the last few years, they kind of changed that up. Let's see. Where are we at in the chat? Todd and Dan are talking about Elgin. Let's see. Card Hobbyist says, I thought those shops were called Wings, or am I misremembering? There's Wings and Eagles, but they have the exact same stuff. The county I went to at college was a dry county. You could buy beer, but had to go to the county line store to get liquor. That was how it was in McDonough County in Macomb. We couldn't even buy beer in McDonough County. Like, you couldn't go to the grocery store. You couldn't go to the liquor stores were closed. Gas stations and grocery stores could not sell beer or any alcohol on Sunday. So you had to drive 20 minutes to Table Grove, which was in Fulton County. So you had to drive to Table Grove to get your beer. They had like one, Table Grove was like population 600. And they had like one gas station, and they made a lot of money on Sundays because all the college kids would drive over to get their 30 packs of Stones. Zach and Porter says is to protect local stores from big box chains from coming in and driving them out. Ironically, not very capitalism friendly, but it's hard to kill now by either political party. Paige and Deanie Bean says, but yes, baseball stadiums charge $74 per can. Todd says Wrigley's $99. Oh my gosh, it's crazy how much beer prices are inside baseball stadiums. Paige and Deanie Bean says, I'm not up to date on inflation. Cooter says, in Oklahoma, we finally got rid of the 3.2% and no cold beer laws. Now, if we can get rid of the rest of the theocracy here. Rich says, ask people who have been in DFW for 20 years or more about Unicard. That's interesting. I don't know the story behind that. So DR wants to know my favorite Cubs at each position. That's tough. I'm going to say Javi. We'll give Javi shortstop so I can have Rhino at second base. Man. I'm just gonna say Ron Santo at third base, even though I didn't watch. It's hard to, like, who are your favorite players of guys that you didn't watch. Catcher is gonna be tough. Let's just leave it to my favorite Cubs position players of my lifetime. So third base, I'm just going to go with Chris Bryant. Shortstop, I'm going to go with Javi Baez. Second base, I'm going to go with Ryan Sandberg. First base, it's either Rizzo or Grace. I'm going to go Rizzo over Grace. I was never a big Mark Grace fan. Let's see. Catcher, I'm gonna go Wilson Contreras at catcher. Let's see. Pitcher. Man, I loved Zambrano. I loved Kerry Wood. I'm gonna go Kerry Wood at starting pitcher. I'm just gonna name one starting pitcher. I'm gonna go Kerry Wood. Close. I'm gonna do a closer though. Rod Beck. Rod Beck's my closer. Outfield. I gotta go Sammy Sosa. I'm going to go Andre Dawson. I'm just going to name 3 outfielders regardless of where they played. So I'm going to go Dawson. I'm going to go Dawson, Sosa, and I need one more outfielder. Man, who's going to be my third outfielder? And again, this is just my time, my growing up. And Dan says Palmeiro, Reed Johnson, Keith Moreland, Kingman. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. And you know what? If you ask me tomorrow, my answers are going to change. And it's like definitely not Alou. He's one of my least favorites because of the whole Bartman incident. Alou is definitely not on my list. But no, all of the names people put, no, I would probably not include any of those. Rick Rona getting hosed, I know, right? Let's see. In some places you had to buy a uni card so you could have a drink at an eatery. Interesting. It was like $2, but good for a year. Let's see. Victor says way different Cub lineup for me. Let's see. DFW area forecast. JG throws Bartman out there. Yes, nearly 90 all weekend and then glorious 70s for a few days. And with that, we'll chat later. Have a great show. Thank you, Rich. So I'm going to go, well, Bobby Dernier played, he was in the infield, but I think he played, actually Bobby Dernier won the Gold Glove in center field, I think. So I'm going to say Bobby Dernier because I like Bobby Dernier. Let's see. Zach and Porter says Mitch Williams is my favorite closer. My 1 year as a Cubs fan. See, I'll have to go back. This is just off like because I forget. Joe Carter never played for the Chicago Cubs, so I can't include him. He played for he would be on my Iowa Cubs team, but not my Chicago Cubs team since he never played in Chicago. So the Madison Card Show is tomorrow. So let's do a quick little preview. If you're coming out, awesome. 9 to 3. I've got 125 tables. We're sold out. I think I did a count the other day. I think I have, let's see. I think I have, 8 new vendors or 10 first times. Let's see. Let's go through the list. And I did get it alphabetized. So we've got Seaver is 1. Let's see. Russell. Let's see. So we're at 2. So these are first timers that have never set up at the Madison Card Show. Let's see. So we're at 2. Jose, John. So we're at 4. 4 first. Jeff. There's 5. Gary. There's 6. Eric. There's 7. So we're at 7 first-time dealers. Dan. There's 8. So we're at 8. Going once. Ben. There's 9. So we're at 9. And Alan. There's 10. So we've got 10 first-time dealers to the Madison Card Show. So we've got 5-star cards taking submissions for PSA and SGC. Great rates now on grading. So check out 5-star. They'll be in the upper level on the second floor in the mezzanine where they've been the last several months. We've got Aaron, Alan, Andrew. You may know Andrew. He runs the card show in New Berlin, Wisconsin. And we've got Ben. Ben is on, he is on, I think, Tough to Find Stuff on Instagram. We've got Billy back. We've got Brad from Stoughton, runs Nelson Cards. He's got some fire. So Brad will be set up again. If you saw Breakout Cards, photos of like the unopened 1952 Bowman baseball pack, the 1961 Fleer basketball pack, those are Brad Richards. He owns Nelson Cards in Stoughton. Brian from Fire Sports on Instagram. He'll be in the Williamson Ballroom on the first floor. We've got Bullfrog Cards out of Baraboo. Cardboard Bros. They specialize in Pokemon. Chad is back. We've got Chris upstairs, Cordell, Craig and Elijah. We've got Craig with the bargain boxes. Dan is, we've got two Dans. One is a first timer, one is a second timer, but Dan R has not been set up in about a year. We've got David back. We've got Teddy. He's Pixel Cards on Instagram. Eric, he's got some great bargain boxes. And by the way, yesterday I said I wasn't planning on buying this weekend. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth because I forgot I have 2 jumbo cases of Pro Debut coming from Tom at Real Breaks. And then I forgot about Eric's. I bought a 5-row box from him of all rookie baseball cards and for like $40. And he's like, I've got a bunch more. So he texted me yesterday. He's like, do you still want, I have 8 rookie boxes for you. So I'll be adding another 25,000 rookie cards. So he's bringing those. So he's got some great bargain boxes. Zach probably knows Eric from the Oak Creek show. Eric W, he's a first-time dealer, so I'm not sure what he'll be bringing. Gary's also a first-time dealer. Not sure. Jared is back. He was set up a few months ago. Jeff Katz is coming up from the Chicago area. Jesse is back. Jim, I've got 3 Jims. Jim F, he's downstairs in the Williamson Ballroom. Jim Cooster and Jim Lyon. Jim Lyon has some really cool, unique items, like pre-war, like non-sports stuff, some really cool pieces. Joe is back after a few months off. John Schroeder from Cards in the Attic. He'll be upstairs. John Gruber, he's got some awesome non-sports wax packs. Herman knows John. John Marsden, he's a first-time dealer, and Jose Roman, first-time dealers, so I'm not sure what they'll be bringing. Jose Sushiel will be there. Josh Mueller's got some great bargain boxes. We've got Kyle Brown, the Lambricks. Matt runs the Green Bay Card Show. They're like the first tables as you walk in upstairs. Lang's back. He'll be in the Williamson Ballroom in the first floor. Logan is back upstairs. Mark, my buddy Mark from Iowa. He's got all the awesome vintage. Matt Phelps is upstairs. He'll be in the mezzanine again this month. Matt Skaggs right next to the Lambricks upstairs. Michael Renicky, who's in this chat, he'll be there. Michael Special's there. We've got the Minster brothers, Baseball Card Haven, Paul. He's got your supply needs. So he'll be upstairs in the main ballroom. Quentin, we've got Ray. We've got 2 Rays upstairs. Ray Hubbard's back after taking the summer off. We've got Riley. We've got the guys from Rockford. We've got Rodney Jones. He's got some older wax. Russell is a first-time dealer. He'll be in the mezzanine upstairs. Ryan is taking it over for Troy, taking Troy's tables. He's on vacay. We've got Ryan Vosen back. Scotty P's in the house. We've got Sheena upstairs right as you walk. As you hit the mezzanine, he's right there. Let's see. Seaver is a first-time dealer. We've got Tim Fritz, who has awesome vintage. That's where I pick up a lot of my pre-war Cubs stuff. We've got Tim W back. Tom, he's got some awesome vintage. Tom from Real Breaks, so he's got your new wax. Tony Gordon, who runs the Oak Creek Card Show. We've got Tristan and Tyler. So we've got a full slate, 125 tables, sold-out show. That's tomorrow, Sheraton Hotel, John Nolen Drive, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Free admission. It's going to be a great time. Hope to see you. I will do I'll walk the floor with a live video tomorrow morning, probably in the 10 o'clock hour when I can make that work. So that's tomorrow. Let's see. Zach and Porter says, better get those new timers to sign that waiver that they may be on video broadcasting to hundreds, right? Let's see. Todd says, pretty sure Carter played part of a season with the Cubs, not in Chicago. Joe Carter did not play at all. I'm going to double check this because maybe he did play like 8 games, but I don't think he played a single game in Chicago. Oh, you are right. He did play a handful of games in 1983. He played 23 games in 1983. So I did misspeak. So Joe Carter did play in Chicago 23 games. Zach and Porter says, tough to find stuff. Say hi. I will. One of our first ever trades. Oh, very cool. Todd says, anyone setting up that specialize in vintage baseball? Oh, yes. We have a lot of vintage. If you go through my YouTube channel and take a look at take a look at search in my YouTube channel for Madison Card Show Live, and that will give you a good idea of, now it's going to be a longer video, but it shows, the dealers, and there's different dealers that swap in and out. Zach says, Tony. So Tony is a great vintage dealer. Like, he has like all vintage. Tim Fritz, all vintage. I don't want to leave anybody out. So let's see. I think Alan will have some vintage on him. Let's see. Brad Richards. I mean, he's got some like unopened packs from Nat Turner's personal collection. So he's got some great vintage. Let's see. I'm trying to think of who else carries vintage. Let's see. Jim Fitzpatrick has vintage. He has a table downstairs. Let's see. Jim Lyon has a lot of vintage, and he has like non-sports vintage as well. Along with sports, he has, I think he has a Babe Ruth or two in his showcase. Let's see. John Gruber, cards from the attic, or John Schroeder, cards from the attic. He specializes in vintage, a little more modern vintage, not pre-war, but 60s, 70s. Let's see. The Lambricks have a decent amount of vintage. Mark Ammonrud has a lot of vintage. Let's see. Who else has vintage? Tim Fritz. He has pre-war vintage. Tom has a lot of vintage. He is basically all vintage. Tony is all vintage. So yeah, probably 10 to 12 guys that specialize in vintage. Let's see. Dan says, will the snuck in early Are You Recording guy be there? Possibly. Not so he won't be a dealer, but he may be walking the floor. Let's see. Zach says, yep, Tony will be there, and he does have a ton of vintage. He has 3 tables full of vintage. Cooter says, what percentage of vintage is raw versus incarcerated at the Madison show? I would say, oh man, I'm seeing, it's hard to find raw I'm thinking pre-war raw vintage in just strictly vintage. I'd say probably 50-50. I don't know if anybody else that walks the Madison Card Show can help me out. I would say probably, if you're talking vintage as in like defined pre-1980, I would say it's probably half and half, and maybe even, because a lot of the 70s stuff is raw. So like Tony has 3 tables, and like most of it's raw. So maybe it's even 70-30 raw to slabbed. Because we're talking, if you're talking 60s and 70s vintage. Now, if you go back pre-war, then most of that's slabbed. And I'm kind of torn by that, because I can get raw cheaper, and then I can just submit it for $25 or $19 to SGC. But sometimes it's raw for a reason, because it won't get slabbed, as I found out with my first and most recent. I shouldn't say first and last, because I'm subbing this weekend. My first and most recent, my first and only submission, where I had 2 that would not be slabbed because they were too brittle. So I just have to be careful with what I buy raw. So that's the Madison Card Show. Retail is not dead. I went to Walmart yesterday, and did you know Walmart sells more than just baseball cards? Who would have thought? I went to Walmart for non-baseball card reasons. Now, there was actually like 3 reasons I went to Walmart. One of the 3 reasons was because I want Topps archives. So I went to I had to go to the Sheraton to make sure the tables were set up in the right order and put name tags on the tables. And then there's a Walmart just at the next exit. So I'm like, I'm going to hit the Walmart, because I was also looking for, I'm pricing out I'm just shopping around for computers. As that's something that I've been saying for quite some time now. So I wanted to price out computers, and I also wanted to see if they had like tables, because I have dealers that want to get into the show, but the Sheraton has run out of tables. And I have some places where if somebody like just wants a spot, I can probably squeeze a table here and there in. It's not like I can add 10 tables, but I can squeeze a table here and there. If somebody like last minute, like, hey, can I get a spot? I don't care where it's at. Okay, I'll just bring my own table in, and basically it's paid off, that first month. So I was shopping for that as well. Computer, table, cards. So I went to the first store. It didn't look like it was stocked. Went to the second store. There were 3 guys waiting, and I just walked up. I saw 2 guys out of the corner of my eye standing off in the corner, and then I saw another guy like he had his eyes like laser focused on the card section. I'm like, oh, I gotta beat this guy. So I walked in, and there's like boxes everywhere, and there's a dude stocking. And like, I never run into the Walmart vendor, so I have no idea who they are, what they look like, anything like that. So he just kind of looks at me like, hey, I'm working here. So, and I don't even know the process. Like, I haven't, like, I don't chase the retail. Like, I go and I look for retail, but I don't care when they stock. Like, because usually what I'm looking for is what few other people are looking for. So, like, I'm looking for Topps Archives, and I doubt the people that were there and waiting were looking for Topps Archives. They were probably looking for whatever shiny new product, football, basketball, is coming out this week, which I don't care about that. I want baseball. I want Topps Archives. So I went up, and I just like, now in hindsight, it's like, man, I just walked up like I owned the place. The vendor like kind of looked at me like, hey, I'm working here. So I'm just looking around, and it's like, well, I'm here. So I'm I want to see what you got. But I didn't see any archives. So I just walked away. And as I walked out, the guys were still waiting. So I like had no interest in waiting. So I'm still looking for Topps Archives. And by the time I see Topps Archives retail, it's like, well, now I don't want Topps Archives, because we've still got Heritage Miners is pushed back till December. So I guess I don't feel bad about buying more Pro Debut tomorrow and not finding archives, and getting all those bulk boxes tomorrow as well. So retail is, and people are like, oh, there's retail everywhere on the shelf. It's dead. You know what? It looks like it did in April of 2020. As late as June 2020, like 3-4 months into COVID, I went into Target, and the vendor, his name's Stu. I know the Target vendor. He's like, are you looking for basketball and whatever it was? I think it was like Illusions or whatever. And I'm like, no, I don't want basketball. I'm looking for Bowman. And that was like around the time Bowman came out. So I was like looking for Bowman. So I went to the next store. Like I knew his schedule at that time. So I went to the other store later in the day, and there he is again. When he asked me at that first store, like, do I want basketball? I'm like, no, I don't want basketball. So when I went to my car, I looked up it's like, holy crap, I can sell these for double to triple on eBay. So when I went to the second store, I'm like, now I want basketball. And it was like crappy product. It was like Illusions or something that now will sit on the shelf. And that was June of 2020. And you could basically get your pick. Nobody was buying that stuff. Now, by the end of June, that's when at least here in this area, that's when tables turned. And I went to Target like the next week maybe, and there's like 5 people standing around waiting for the vendor. It's like, oh boy, here we go. And now that it's back to like pre-COVID times, people think it's dead. It's not dead. It's just normal from what we lived through 3 years ago, 2 years ago. So retail ain't dead. It's just, it's back to normal. And I know the first argument was, and really when the shelves were empty at Walmart and Target, it wasn't there. There was more demand. There were more people in it. But a lot of that stuff was being taken by like 1 or 2, maybe 3 people, and they were just hoarding it. And now it's collectors, or guys like me that just want Topps Archives, and I'll go in, I'll buy 3 or 4 blasters or Bowman U football or whatever crappy product that I like and that other people like, but people see, oh my God, look at all this basketball, look at all this football. Nobody wants this. It's overpriced and overproduced. Some of it is overpriced, but it's not overproduced. It's probably in line with the annual upping in production. So that's my take. That's my thoughts. Pepino Man is here. Coffee tables at the show. So that's all I had for today. I am going to run. I've got some shipping to do so I don't get too far behind after the show. Again, the Madison Card Show is tomorrow, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Sheraton Hotel, John Nolen Drive. It is UW homecoming, so the kickoff isn't until like 2:30. So after the show, come out to the Sheraton and John Nolen Drive. You just take John Nolen Drive into downtown Madison, and you're a few minutes away from Camp Randall Stadium. Wisconsin and Purdue is tomorrow afternoon's football game, Big Ten football, after the Madison Card Show. Pepino says people saying retail is dead, card shows are dying, are gossip channels looking for clicks. And that's a great point. So I'm not going to leave just yet. Pepino Man brings up a really, really good point. And I was actually thinking about this yesterday where, and I need to watch what I say, but I've always been a realist. Like, I don't want to pump say, just for example, I'm promoting my Madison Card Show tomorrow. I don't want to pump, like back in the day, like a year and a half ago when I was first starting out and it was 17 tables and it looked cavernous. I didn't want to say it's the greatest card show in Wisconsin. It's the blah, 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 because it wasn't. And I still don't want to say that because that's all subjective. So I want to be real. And I tell like dealers, I'm not just selling to selling tables to dealers that want in the show. When somebody says, I've got a bunch of autographed jerseys and helmets, and I will tell them, you probably won't sell many because just from previous vendors who have set up with that type of like memorabilia, it's a card show. It's not really the contingent of customers are not really buying memorabilia. They're buying cards. And so I tell people, they're like, yeah, I've got a lot of autographed jerseys and helmets. And so I say, historically, that is not sold at my show, but you would probably be the only vendor with that type of stuff. So if somebody does come in shopping for that, you might have luck. But historically, vendors with that have not done well. So I like to keep it real and be honest, transparent. And I got to thinking yesterday about Pepino's comment where, people are saying retail is dead. The hobbies, oh my God, look at where the prices, Luka rookies are down. But hey, take a look at 2019 prices on Luka or Michael Jordan rookies. Like, I think that's probably a better example than the shiny new rookies of Zion and Luka and Ja. Look at the 86 Fleer Jordan and look at the prices in December of 2019 and just compare them. Just compare them year over year. October. What did one sell for in October of 2019, October of 2020, October of 2021, October of 2022? And you would be, pretty surprised that, hey, it's probably in line with the rate of inflation. But we like to isolate those COVID numbers. Oh, Michael Jordan sold for $1 million. And guess what? That was not the norm. That was that whole COVID boom was just this weird one-off. That's not the hobby. And some people got sucked in. They're like, oh, the hobby's, it's going to keep going up on this trajectory. It's like, no, you're an idiot. It's not. My apologies if you said that and I called you an idiot. But that's my thought. And I agree with Pepino where it's clickbait. And sometimes I'm guilty of clickbait just to get those clicks on YouTube. But I need to watch because it's like, especially if you're doing this for a living, like I sell cards for a living. And if I come on here and talk every week about how my eBay numbers are down and the hobby is dying, that's not good for business. That's not good for business. But lying isn't either. And saying, it has to be, you have to be real. And there is a fine line. Like you don't want to go out every week and say the hobby's dying. Look how much Luka's dropping in price. Look how much the Jordan has decreased in price. But you also don't want to go out and say right now, Will Grier is 4 times the better investment than Kyler Murray. Like you don't want to like have takes like that. But I get it. That's that channel's niche. People have their niches, but it's like there has to be a fine line. And I was actually just thinking about that yesterday, where it's like, you know what? I've probably been guilty here recently about, oh, my eBay page views are actually, my page views are up, my impressions are down, and you know what? Let's be real. eBay right now, my sales are up 30% in the last 30 days. My expense, that's my raw eBay data. So my expenses, I would say, because I've probably spent more in the last 30 days than what I did those previous 30 days, it's still 20%. Based on net sales, still in the green by far, taking into consideration the expenses or the cost of goods sold. So my sales are still up. My impressions are down. My impressions are down on 4,000 more listings than this time last month. My impressions are down about 0.5%. Not too bad. But again, on 4,000 additional listings. But my page views are up over 5%. So while the impressions, the eyeballs that are seeing my listings are down, my people, like, when they see it, they like what I have. So they're clicking on it. And then that's my sales conversion rate's 8.1%, which is really good. So people are buying, and that's why my eBay sales are up 30%. So just that's my last thought for the morning, I guess. So yeah, and I need to be careful. Pepino, great point. And it's kind of like, man, we're talking about this, and it's like, you don't want to be screaming from the mountaintops, buy, 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 but then you don't want to be like, sell, sell, sell. I mean, it's got to be a happy medium. Matt says, good luck. Thank you very much. Paige and Deanie Bean says, but the manufacturers saw what secondary profits were. So manufacturers now listing price based an 18-month-old trend. And so this is a good, I agree with what Topps did. Panini and Panini admitted, somebody was on somebody from Panini was on a podcast like during the retail boom, and they said it was experimental. And if you've shopped for retail, you've noticed Panini prices have kind of fluctuated. Like, I don't even know. It's annoying. I need to get that app that Herman recommended, because at Walmart you can scan and see, because it's all out of place. And I like, okay, how much is this box? It may only be 25 Panini. This one might be 38. So you don't know. Topps has been pretty consistent, where it's like they did a $5 increase, which is great. It should have been, hey, I know this is probably, some people will be like, oh, no, you're crazy. Topps should have raised their blaster box prices 5 years ago. They should have been $25 5 years ago. Some people will argue that, well, they're giving you less cards. That's not really the case. In some cases, yes, Topps flagship, I believe 10 years ago, was 100 cards. It's still 100 cards today. You're still getting the same amount for the same amount of money. Same amount of cards, same amount of money. I did look up, I think, Topps Archives, just because that's a new product. I think you're getting like 12 less cards now than you were 10 years ago. But the price, and I think it's $5 more, $12 or 12 less cards in a 10-year span. That's okay. That's pretty good. You're not going to be paying a nickel a pack for eternity. Like, it's not like 1952 Topps nickel packs. It's not going to stay a nickel a pack. You are going to see some rising in prices. So, from a business standpoint, I agree and disagree. Like what Panini did, it's like, I think they could have done a much better job at controlling their prices and not experimented. And they jacked up the prices of some blaster boxes, like nearly double, like from $20 to $35. Like that's just, that's pretty crazy for just from 1 year to the next. But some of those blaster boxes were selling for $100. So it's like, hey, we're selling these to MJ and to XL for $10 a blaster, $12 a blaster. They're selling them for $20, and then the flipper consumer is flipping them from $20 to $100. Hey, we need some scratch in here somewhere. So I think Topps has done it the right way. Panini has fumbled the ball a little bit. Jenny says, good luck to anyone shipping on eBay today. Their system is way messed up. Thank you, Jenny, because I am experiencing the same thing. It's annoying as hell because this is one reason the whole shipping what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it, but this is the reason why I'm cool with their fees, because it's these data. What's the like Salesforce? What's the Salesforce platform called? Is it a Salesforce? It is a CRM. So that's why I think the eBay fees are more than fair, because you get their CRM, which is amazing. And if you've ever been in sales or shopped for a CRM, they're freaking expensive. So the eBay fees and what you can do within eBay and their CRM is amazing. But it's not working very well today. Now, I did notice, Jenny, my when I shipped a bubble mailer, it did. So what's happening, just to, at least on my end, when I go in and ship something, now when I shipped a bubble mailer, I package it up, ship it out, and when I click back to my awaiting shipment orders, that's how I ship all my stuff, is I go by the awaiting shipment tab. It did clear out the bubble mailer, but my standard envelope is not being cleared out. So it still says awaiting shipment. So I shipped out like a fuchsia parallel Ian Moeller. And I shipped it out, paid for the postage, boom, out the door, back. It's awaiting shipment. So I went into manually, mark shipped, didn't work. So now I'm going back and it's like, crap, I don't know which ones I actually shipped. If I'm bouncing around like, oh, this card's right here, boom, boom, boom. So yes, it's way messed up and it's really annoying. So I may actually take a break from shipping this morning and list because I'll get super confused. So thank you, Jenny, because that is something that I wanted to mention. Where are we at? Jenny says it's creating labels that tells you there's an error on, and then you can't find the label under shipping labels to reprint. And paid ship now is a disaster of orders you've shipped. Yes. And Jenny says it seems to be universal on both desktop and app. And yesterday I had like 15. It was like awaiting shipment, like 150. And it's like, wow, I didn't realize I sold like an extra 20 items. And it had like 20 items that I had refunded like months ago showing up in my awaiting shipment tab. So yes, there's a lot of like weird stuff going on eBay's back end this morning. Pepino Man says, my hobby love hasn't budged. I'm with you on that. Let's see. Jenny says, so true. I saw it coming. Paige and Deanie Bean says, I love buying 90s boxes because they are $10, $20, $30 a box still. Manufacturers used comps because everyone said use comps. Hobby says eBay comps are the comps to use. I agree, Andrew. I'm looking for a box of 91 Studio. I've had the urge to rip one for a while. Card Hobbyist says, what grinded my gears the most during the rush was the big companies like Blowout, David Adams, putting bounties on retail. That was annoying. And that just led to more hoarding. Colin Murray says, card shows are not dying with eBay charging tax now in Canada. Starting 3 months ago, it will have an impact on higher priced cards, so shows are seeing a spike in Canada. So we did see a dip, and again, this is not me saying, oh my God, card shows are dying. But I did see across the board September shows were down. The show that I set up at in Rockford in September, traffic was very slow. My show in Madison last month was slow. The Vegas show and the Indianapolis show in Fishers were also slow in September. Now, our show last week, so I was like doom and gloom on my outlook for the Midwest premiere last weekend. We had great turnout. So hopefully it was just like a September slowdown, and we're back at it in October. So hopefully that's going to be the case. We'll find out tomorrow. I won't be live tomorrow morning, but I will do a card show live. I'll walk the show floor tomorrow at the Madison Card Show, and then I'll review the show Sunday morning. So we'll review the Madison Card Show Sunday morning. Pepino Man adds, amazing how much pump and dumpers affected the hobby, which was relatively a pure hobby for over a century. But I would argue that the late 80s, early 90s, like that was a bunch of pump and dump. The 80s, the craze of the late 80s, early 90s, maybe even more so. I feel like the late 80s, early 90s surge in the hobby was more scummy than what it was last year, 2020 and 2021. And one of the reasons I say this, and Zach actually mentioned it to me, because Zach got back into the hobby during COVID, and his son Porter, going to card shows, dealers would give Porter like every dealer was giving Porter free cards. I was going to card shows in the early 90s, and like every dealer seemed like Comic Book Man from The Simpsons, where they were all in it for the bottom line. Like, and I know this, and this is just my own personal observation from being at card shows as a kid. I never got free stuff from vendors, from dealers. It was all about, and they were charging me full price on cards. I know everybody has different observations and life experiences from, if you were in that era. But Zach mentioned that to me, and I don't know if Zach can comment on that, but if he's still in here. But I thought about that, and it's like, yeah, you know what? That's true. Like, now dealers are really, and because I think it's like this whole generational thing where the dealers now are our age, and we didn't it was almost like, oh, you're a kid, like, get out. This is an adult hobby. That's what I felt like. That now, like, in hindsight, like, my thinking process, it was almost like the dealers and the adults didn't want kids in the hobby, where now it's like reversed. Like, we as the adult dealers were kids in the hobby. We don't want kids to feel like that. We want to grow the hobby. And I feel like it was, so I think even though there were bad eggs, and there's always going to be bad eggs in whatever industry market it is, but I feel that it's not as bad as what it was in the early 90s. Don West, the original Gary V, absolutely. Let's see. Low Roller says, you heard the new YouTube channel called The Card Life. Low Roller Scratcher, I'm going to give you a little insight. I was on the Card Life TV show. I think it was episode 2 last year. They came to my house and filmed. So go into the archives, and I was on the show. So yes, I have heard of it. Cooter says today was a far worse for pump and dump with all the social media platforms. So I agree in the sense that now we have the internet. I don't think if we had the internet in the early 90s, I think it would have been worse in the early 90s because of the platform. I think the only reason it was worse today than 30 years ago was because there was no internet 30 years ago. Too many content creators are just modern day carpetbaggers. So yeah, and that's, I think that's why we kind of have that vision of it's worse now. We always paint a rosy picture of the past. Like, that's just human behavior. We always, the good old days. It was so much better, but in reality it wasn't. But I think, a lot, it's like, how come this happens and this happens? Well, we have a 24-hour news cycle, and we have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all this and blah, blah, blah. DR says, one part of the boom that I don't quite think we've unpacked enough is for certain people, their jobs were totally wiped out, and selling cards was a way to bring in money into the household. That's true. And even not having their jobs wiped out, but just the whole working from home. And I live in like basically a rural area of Madison. My drive to the office was 10 to 15 minutes. But working from home gave me an additional 5 to 6 hours a week to list cards and ship cards. So even from like go to extremes, like if you had to deal with a 2-hour commute or a 1-hour commute, think of all that time saving that you could devote to, cards. Low Roller says, everyone love YOLO stuff like crypto, sports cards, stock and slot machines, lottery. So many gambling options today to spend money at work. JG says, a lot of grumpy dealers at those shows back in the day. Absolutely. DR says, I vaguely remember smoking happening inside card shows when I was a kid. I don't know if it's a real memory or not. Oh, I'm sure it was a real memory. I mean, I remember smoking inside restaurants. I mean, having your chicken fried steak and dad smoking a heater sitting right next to you. So yeah, I'm sure that there were sure there was smoking going on inside card shows. Colin says the expo in Canada is in November when Upper Deck Hockey is released. Running shows when 3 of the 4 sports haven't started the season doesn't help. Now football, basketball, and hockey seasons are here. Paige and DD Bean says awesome point about dealers are now the 90s kids that were mistreated. So there we go. I said I was done 25 minutes ago, and here we are, an hour and 15. That's why it's a free-for-all Friday. You never know. You never know. Do you think the IRS will come back in the card show since people wouldn't have to pay taxes if you sold $600 or more if you were a seller? This is a great point that Low Roller brings up. And the state of Arkansas has unique vendor tax law. So like promoters have to, you have to report your earnings from a card show to the promoter. And basically the dealers have to pay the promoter taxes, and the promoter then has to report those and pay those taxes. I wouldn't be surprised if we did see other states replicate that. And there may be some other states. I know Arkansas is one. I'm not sure if there's others, but I would not be surprised if other states would put some type of law for promoters of events that are selling wares. But hopefully not in the near future, but I wouldn't be surprised if that does happen. Let's see. Zach says dealers are much nicer to Porter than they ever were to us. However, I am seeing more dealers treating kids who act like adults no different than they treat other adults selling. And I think that's good. Because I think there's it's kind of like we said, all rookie cards are not created equal. I need to be careful of how I word this. All kid collectors aren't created because there's kids with better collections than many adults out there. And they're wheeling, like I've seen some like 10, 12-year-olds that can really wheel and deal. And, I think it's good that those kids, like it's kind of it's basically a business. It's basically like on the spot training for business. I think it's great. If a kid's into flipping, now I'm not saying like a dealer should be an a-hole and like curse at a kid. Shouldn't curse at anybody, but if they want to treat it like a real business transaction, I think it's awesome that a dealer treats the kid like an adult. It's a great educational experience when it comes to business. Baseball card curmudgeons in the house. Low Roller says, if you are not the vendor, ? If you just regular folks to sell your card to the dealer, will the IRS go after you next? Well, it depends. If you're selling 100,000, if your bank account has $100,000 in it and you don't have a way to prove, and the IRS sees that, then you're going to be in trouble. But if you're just selling $1,000 here and $500 there, is the IRS going to go after you? Probably not. But just be cognizant that they could. Pay your taxes, says Erwin R. Shyster. Zach and Porter says, in my opinion, some of the generosity and goodwill P receives is based on how he collects and interacts with the dealers talking about cards or the history of the game. Absolutely. And there's like, and I think that's just like, if a kid shows interest, especially in like the history of the game, it's like you reward that. If a kid comes up and that's kind of like to the thought of kids acting like adults get treated like adults. It's like, if they come up trying to wheel and deal on a $100, $1,000, $5,000 card, and they're just wanting to take it to the next dealer and make $100, now it's business. Let's see. Zach and Porter says, Porter isn't approaching the dealer and saying, are you buying, before even saying hello. I get that a lot. And that's a learning experience I don't hate on that because, it is a kid. Like, say a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, 10-year-old comes up, are you buying? Like, we as adults think, okay, that's poor communication, poor manners, poor business. But again, he's 11 years old. So I kind of give it a pass at times. Let's see. Brian says, I was paying taxes at 12 in Florida, did card shows on weekends till 17 when it crashed. Pepino Man says, at my last national, there was kids selling vintage cards of players they knew nothing about. Low Roller says, you can hide the money in the sofa. The IRS wouldn't know about it. I wouldn't recommend that, but you do you. My friend Brad says, you do you, boo. You do you. So I think that's what I had. I think that's what I had for today. So thanks again. Great chat this morning. Madison Card Show tomorrow, 9 to 3, 125 tables. Come on out. John Nolen Drive, Sheraton Hotel, Madison, Wisconsin. We'll see you there. Go Badgers. Homecoming for Wisconsin against Purdue. It's a 2:30 kickoff, so you can come to the card show, go to the game afterwards. So I will go live from the Madison Card Show at some point tomorrow morning, and then I will report back and do a full review on Sunday morning, probably around 8 a.m. Sunday morning. So with that, I bid you adieu. Have a great Friday, and we'll see you tomorrow for Madison Card Show Live.